Sundar Pichai was flying on a regular international flight. It wasn't a special event or a press trip. He was just traveling for work, like many other business people do every day. But what made this flight different was not the plane, the route, or even the weather. It was who was sitting in one of the first-class seats. Sundar Pichai is the CEO of Google and Alphabet Inc., two of the biggest tech companies in the world. If you use a smartphone, search engine, or email, chances are you've used something he helped build. But despite being one of the most powerful people in technology, Sundar doesn't act like a celebrity. He doesn't wear flashy clothes, he doesn't demand special treatment, and he doesn't surround himself with a big team when he travels. On this particular day, he walked onto the plane quietly. No cameras followed him. No red carpet rolled out. Just a man in a suit, carrying his own small bag, looking around for his seat. He smiled at the crew as he boarded, gave a polite nod, and made his way to his first-class seat without any fuss. First class is usually filled with rich people, celebrities, or high-ranking officials. Some travelers love the luxury, others barely notice it. But Sundar didn't seem impressed by the extra leg room or the fancy meal options. He looked like he was just happy to have a window seat and some peace during the long flight. He sat down, buckled his seatbelt, and got ready for takeoff, like everyone else. Around him were other passengers, some reading books, some sleeping already, and some tapping away on their laptops. To most people on that flight, he was just another businessman flying across the world. But there was someone on board who didn't know who he was. That person was a new flight attendant named Maya, not her real name. She had just joined the airline a few months ago after finishing her training. She was young, enthusiastic, and very proud to be working on international flights. She loved traveling, meeting new people, and helping passengers feel comfortable during their journey. Maya was assigned to the first-class section that day. Her job was to make sure the VIPs, the important customers, had everything they needed. She had been told before that sometimes famous people flew on these routes, but she hadn't seen anyone recognizable yet. As she walked through the cabin checking on passengers, she noticed Sundar. He looked professional, calm, and kind of quiet. He wasn't asking for anything, so she moved on to other passengers who had called for help. She thought to herself, another businessman, probably tired from work. She had no idea that the man sitting calmly in front of her was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, that he ran one of the most powerful companies in the world, that his decisions affected billions of people every single day. To her, he was just another face in the crowd. And that's exactly how Sundar liked it. You see, Sundar Pichai grew up in India, in a modest home where money was tight and resources were limited. His family couldn't afford many things, but they worked hard and valued education. From a young age, Sundar learned to be humble, respectful, and grateful for what he had. Even now, after reaching the top of the tech world, he still carries those values with him. He treats everyone with kindness, whether they're a janitor or a billionaire. He believes that respect should never depend on someone's title or wealth. So as the plane took off, Sundar settled into his seat, opened a book, and began reading. The engines roared, the wheels lifted, and soon they were soaring above the clouds. The city below them faded into blue skies and white fluff. Inside the cabin, life continued as usual. Passengers sipped drinks, watched movies, or tried to nap. The crew moved through the aisles with practiced ease, offering snacks, pillows, and warm towels. Maya did her job well. She checked on each passenger, asked if they needed anything, and smiled warmly. Most of them responded politely. A few didn't even look up from their screens. When she reached Sundar again, he was still reading. She leaned in slightly and said, "Sir, would you like a drink or anything else?" He looked up, smiled kindly, and said, "No, thank you. I'm fine." She nodded and moved on. A little later she passed by again. This time Sundar raised his hand gently and said, "Excuse me, could I get some water, please?" Maya turned around and said, "Sure, I'll bring it right away." She went to the galley, grabbed a bottle of water, and returned. She handed it to him and said, "Here you go." He thanked her and opened the bottle. It was a simple moment, just a request for water and a polite exchange. Nothing unusual, but Maya felt a bit annoyed. She thought to herself, "Why does he keep asking? Everyone gets water when we serve drinks. He didn't need to ask again." She didn't say anything rude at the moment, but inside, she felt like he was trying to get special attention. She brushed it off and continued doing her job. Meanwhile, Sundar had no idea that he had caused any frustration. He was just being polite, asking for something he needed, and showing gratitude, the same way he always did. The flight continued smoothly. Hours passed. People slept, ate, watched movies, chatted quietly. The lights dimmed as night fell outside. The windows. Maya kept walking up and down the aisle, making sure everyone was comfortable. She offered more drinks, checked in on passengers, and made sure the first-class cabin stayed peaceful and luxurious. Every now and then, she glanced at Sundar. He was still reading, still calm, still not asking for anything else. She started to think maybe she had misjudged him. Maybe he's not trying to be annoying, she thought. Maybe he just forgot when the next round of drinks was coming. Still, she decided to keep an eye on him. Not because he was important, but just to make sure he didn't keep interrupting her routine. What she didn't know was that Sundar wasn't even thinking about her. He was focused on his book, his thoughts, and the work he'd left behind back home. To him, this was just a normal flight. A chance to relax, read, and prepare for the next meeting. He didn't expect special treatment. He didn't want to be recognized. He just wanted to travel like a regular person. And that's exactly what he did. Unbeknownst to Maya, she had just interacted with one of the most powerful men in the world, and treated him like any other passenger. What she also didn't know was that the rest of the flight was going to reveal a lot more than just who Sundar really was. It was going to teach her a lesson about humility, assumptions, and the true meaning of leadership. But that part of the story would come later, for now the plane kept flying. The sky remained dark, and Sundar kept reading. The flight was now halfway through its journey. The lights inside the cabin were dimmed. Most passengers had eaten, and many were trying to sleep. Some had pulled out eye masks and neck pillows, while others simply leaned back and closed their eyes. It was quiet except for the soft hum of the airplane engines and the occasional sound of a movie playing on someone's screen. Flight attendants moved quietly through the aisles, making sure everyone was comfortable and offering help if needed. Maya, the young flight attendant who had already served Sundar Pichai water earlier, was now doing her final round before bedtime. She checked on each first-class passenger, made sure they had everything they needed, and offered warm towels or tea if they wanted something calming before sleep. She came to Sundar's seat again. He was still reading his book, but now he looked up as she approached. "Would you like anything else?" Maya asked politely, though there was a slight edge to her tone. Sundar smiled warmly and said, "Actually, could I get some more water, please?" Maya blinked once, then gave a small sigh that only she could hear. She nodded and said, "Sure." She turned and walked back toward the galley, the kitchen area of the plane, where drinks and snacks were kept. As she walked, she thought to herself, "Again? Really? Everyone gets water when we serve drinks. Why does he keep asking for it separately?" She wasn't angry, but she was annoyed. In her mind, Sundar was being a bit too demanding for a simple request. She believed that first-class passengers should know how things worked, that service was timed and organized, not random. She grabbed another bottle of water and returned to Sundar's seat. As she handed it to him, she couldn't help herself. She said, "You know, everyone gets water. You don't have to ask every time." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried just enough for Sundar to hear clearly. It wasn't exactly rude, but it definitely sounded a little sharp, like she was correcting him. Sundar looked at her, surprised for just a moment. But then, as always, he smiled kindly. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said gently. "I just wanted to stay hydrated during the flight." Maya nodded, but she didn't say anything else. She gave a short smile and walked away. As she moved down the aisle, she felt a little guilty. Her words had come out more harshly than she meant them to, but she also felt justified. After all, he was in first class. He should know how flights work, right? Meanwhile, Sundar didn't seem upset at all. He took the water, opened it slowly and took a sip. Then he went back to reading his book, completely calm and unbothered. To him, this was nothing. Just a normal interaction with a tired crew member who probably had a long day ahead. He knew that working on airplanes was hard. Long hours, dealing with hundreds of people, managing schedules and handling unexpected problems. He had no intention of causing trouble. He just wanted to be polite, drink water, and make sure he stayed healthy during the flight. But from Maya's point of view, she had just dealt with a passenger who seemed to want special attention. She didn't know who he was, so she saw him as any other businessman. Maybe rich, maybe important, but still someone who should follow the rules like everyone else. What she didn't realize was that Sundar wasn't trying to be difficult. He wasn't showing off his status or expecting extra treatment. He was just being himself, kind, patient, and respectful. In fact, Sundar had grown up in a very humble environment. He shared a bedroom with his brother. His family didn't have much money. They used one phone for the whole neighborhood. And yet, even with all the success he had today, he still remembered where he came from. That's why he never acted entitled. He never demanded respect. He gave it freely, even to people who didn't know who he was. Back in the galley, Maya was helping prepare the next round of drinks. One of the senior flight attendants noticed her distracted look and asked, "Is everything okay?" Maya shrugged. "Yeah, I guess. There's just this guy in seat 3A who keeps asking for water." The senior attendant raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Did he seem upset or demanding?" "No," Maya replied. "He was polite, just kept asking." The older flight attendant smiled slightly. "Well, sometimes people get thirsty. It's part of the job." Maya nodded, but inside she still felt a little bothered. Not because of what Sundar had done, but because of how she had responded. She replayed the moment in her head. How she told him, "Everyone gets water. Don't act like you're special." She winced a little, thinking about it. Why did I say that? She asked herself. She hadn't meant to hurt anyone's feelings. She was just tired and frustrated. And maybe, just maybe, she had assumed he was trying to be difficult. As the night continued, Maya tried to push the moment out of her mind. She focused on her work, made sure everyone was taken care of, and helped the cabin settle into a peaceful rhythm. Eventually, the flight started its descent. The captain announced that they would be landing soon. Lights came on, people stretched, flight attendants prepared for arrival. Maya began collecting cups and trash from the passengers. She reached Sundar's seat again. He was putting his book away and getting ready for landing. She smiled softly and said, "We'll be landing soon." Sundar nodded and said, "Thank you for your help." Maya hesitated for a second. Then she said, "No problem. Sorry if I sounded a bit harsh earlier." Sundar smiled again. The same warm, friendly smile he had given her all along. "It's fine," he said. "You were doing your job. No harm done." Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. She nodded, thanked him, and moved on. But deep down, she felt something else. Curiosity. Who was this man who stayed so calm, even when she had spoken to him sharply? Why didn't he react like others might, by complaining or calling the manager? And why did he seem so human? She didn't know it yet, but the answer to those questions would come soon. Because later, when the flight landed and the crew reviewed the passenger list, they would see a name that shocked them. They would realize that the ordinary passenger in seat 3A was actually one of the most powerful men in the world. And Maya would feel both embarrassed and inspired by the way he handled himself. But, for now, the plane touched down smoothly on the runway. The engines slowed, the doors opened, and the story was far from over. The plane landed safely at its destination. The runway lights glowed softly under the early morning sky. The engines slowed down with a low hum as the aircraft came to a stop. A soft cheer from some passengers broke the silence. They were finally here after a long flight. Inside the cabin, people began to stir. Some stretched their arms, others checked their phones, now allowed in airplane mode, and many simply sat quietly, still half asleep. Maya, the young flight attendant, was already on her feet. She had done this routine dozens of times before, checking the cabin one last time, making sure all the trash was collected, and preparing for the orderly exit of first-class passengers. She moved through the aisle with practiced ease, smiling at familiar faces and thanking passengers for flying with them. As she passed Sundar Pichai's seat again, he gave her a small nod and said, "Thank you again." She smiled back politely but didn't say much. Her mind was focused on wrapping up the flight smoothly. Once the captain gave the signal that it was safe to begin disembarking, the senior flight attendants gathered near the front of the cabin to check the final passenger list. This was part of standard procedure, especially on international flights where VIPs or important guests might be on board. Sometimes airlines received special requests ahead of time, preferred meals, extra privacy, or even just a heads-up about who was flying. Maya watched as the head flight attendant scanned the screen on her tablet. Suddenly, her eyes widened slightly. She looked up at the other crew members and whispered something Maya couldn't hear. Curious, Maya stepped closer. "What is it?" she asked. The senior attendant turned to her and said, "Did you know who was sitting in seat 3A? Maya frowned. "No. I mean, he seemed like a regular businessman. Quiet, polite, kind of low-key." The senior flight attendant raised an eyebrow and handed her the tablet. Maya looked at the screen. It showed the full list of first-class passengers. Her eyes scanned the names, and then she saw it. Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google and Alphabet Inc. Maya froze. For a moment, everything went quiet in her head. She stared at the name, trying to process what she was seeing. "Wait, that guy? The one I told off earlier?" She felt her stomach drop. She remembered exactly what she had said to him. "Everyone gets water. Don't act like you're special." Oh, no. That wasn't just any passenger. That was one of the most powerful tech leaders in the world. The man who ran Google. The person behind Chrome, Android, Gmail, YouTube, and so much more. Millions of people used his products every day. Billions of dollars were connected to his decisions, and she had treated him like someone who was being annoying. Maya's face turned red. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I think I was rude to him." The senior flight attendant gave her a gentle smile. "Well, he didn't complain. In fact, he was very polite." Maya looked back toward the cabin. Sundar was now standing by the exit, waiting his turn to leave. He looked calm, as always. No signs of frustration, no anger, no complaints. Just the same quiet, friendly man she had interacted with during the flight. She wanted to disappear. How could she have not recognized him? How could she have assumed he was just another business traveler? It wasn't like he had any flashy signs of wealth. No bodyguards, no luxury luggage, no loud talking. Just a man in a suit, reading a book, asking for water, and saying thank you. He didn't act like a billionaire. He acted like a normal, human being, and she had made a mistake. Big time. Maya stood there for a moment thinking. She knew she had two choices. Pretend it never happened. Apologize and own up to her behavior. She knew what the right thing to do was. Taking a deep breath, she walked toward him. He turned as she approached. "Yes?" he asked gently. Maya looked into his eyes. They weren't angry, not even disappointed, just calm. I just wanted to say I'm really sorry," she said quickly, almost nervously. "I didn't realize who you were, and I said something really rude earlier. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that." Sundar looked at her for a second. Then he smiled, the same warm, friendly smile he had given her the whole flight. "It's okay," he said. "You were doing your job. I understand how stressful working on a flight can be. Everyone has a bad moment sometimes." Maya blinked. She hadn't expected that. "You're not upset?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not at all. You came to apologize. That shows character. I appreciate that." Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. Not because she was sad, but because she was overwhelmed. Here was one of the most successful men in the world, forgiving her for a moment of carelessness. Not only that, he respected her enough to acknowledge that she had tried to do the right thing. She took a shaky breath and said, "Thank you. That means a lot," Sundar nodded. "Have a good day." Then he turned and walked off the plane, leaving Maya standing there with a mix of emotions swirling inside her. She felt embarrassed, yes, but also inspired. Because Sundar hadn't yelled at her. He hadn't demanded apologies from management. He hadn't posted anything online. He hadn't even looked upset. He had just been himself, kind, humble, and understanding. Maya looked back at the senior flight attendant, who gave her a knowing look. "Sheesh," the older woman said with a chuckle. "You just met Sundar Pichai?" Maya laughed nervously. "Yeah, I know now." Back outside, Sundar was already being greeted by someone from his team. A car waited nearby. Life would go on for him. Meetings, emails, strategy calls. But for Maya, this moment was unforgettable. It taught her something important. You should never judge people based on appearances, because the quietest person in the room might be the most powerful one. And the kindest person you meet might be the one with the most reason to expect respect, yet chooses to give it instead. After Sundar Pichai stepped off the plane, Maya stood there for a few more seconds, watching him disappear into the airport terminal. He walked calmly, like he had done it 100 times before. No rush, no ego, just quiet confidence. She felt her heart beating fast, not from excitement, but from embarrassment and something else she couldn't quite name yet. Maybe admiration. She had just treated one of the most powerful men in the world like an ordinary passenger. And not only that, she had spoken to him in a way she wouldn't even speak to a regular customer if she knew who they were. And yet, Sundar hadn't gotten angry. He didn't make a scene. He didn't ask to talk to her supervisor or file a complaint. He simply said, "It's okay. You were doing your job." That response stayed with Maya as she helped finish cleaning up the cabin. She kept replaying their conversation in her head. It wasn't just about apologizing, it was about how Sundar had handled everything with grace. She thought about other passengers she had met on flights, rich people who complained about the temperature, celebrities who refused to say thank you, and business people who acted like the whole flight was there just for them. But Sundar, he was different. He had power, money, and influence, things that could open any door in the world. But instead of using that power to demand respect, he gave it freely. Maya realized something important in that moment. True leadership isn't about titles or wealth. It's about how you treat people when nobody is watching. She looked around at her co-workers. Some were chatting casually, others were packing up leftover food trays. The senior flight attendant caught her eye again and gave her a small smile. "You okay?" she asked gently. Maya nodded. "Yeah, I think so." Then she added, almost shyly, "I feel really bad about what I said earlier." Her co-worker placed a hand on her shoulder. "You already apologized." That's more than most people do. Maya smiled weakly. Still, I wish I had known who he was. The older woman chuckled. Well, now you know why we always treat everyone the same. Maya thought about that. She had always been told during training that every passenger deserves respect, no matter who they are. But today, she had learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. Later, after finishing her duties, Maya sat down in the crew lounge at the airport. Her shift was over, but her mind was still racing. She pulled out her phone and typed, "Just met Sundar Pichai on my flight. Treated me like a human being even after I was rude to him. Never forget this day." She posted it on her private social media account. Not to brag, not to shame herself publicly, but just to remember. She wanted to keep this moment close to her heart. A little while later, she got a message from a friend. Wait, the Sundar Pichai? Like, Google? Maya laughed softly and replied, Yes. Her friend responded with a string of shocked emojis and then wrote, What did he say? Maya typed back slowly, He forgave me, even thanked me for apologizing, said I was doing my job. Her friend sent a single sentence back. He's a real leader. Maya stared at those words for a long time. Yes, Sundar Pichai ran one of the biggest companies in the world. Yes, he made billions of dollars. But what made him truly special wasn't his wealth or title. It was his kindness, his humility, his ability to stay calm and respectful even when someone didn't give him the same treatment. As Maya waited for her ride back to the hotel, she started thinking about how this experience would change her. From now on, she promised herself she wouldn't judge passengers based on how they looked or how much they asked for. She wouldn't assume someone was being difficult just because they spoke up. Because sometimes, the quietest person on the plane might be the most important one. And sometimes, the kindest person you meet might be the one who has the least reason to be kind, but chooses to be anyway. Back at the airport exit, Sundar was already inside the car waiting for him. His assistant greeted him warmly. Welcome back, Mr. Pichai. Sundar smiled. Thanks. How's everything going? They talked briefly about meetings and schedules, but Sundar's mind wandered back to the flight for just a second. He thought about the young flight attendant, Maya. He remembered how nervous she looked when she came up to apologize. He remembered the genuine regret in her voice. He didn't blame her, not for a second. In fact, he respected her even more for coming forward. Many people wouldn't have done that. They would have ignored it, pretended it never happened, or blamed someone else. But Maya owned up to her mistake. That showed character. Sundar believed that everyone deserved a second chance. He knew what it was like to make mistakes. He grew up in a modest home in India, where his parents worked hard to give him a good life. He didn't forget where he came from. He didn't act like he was better than anyone else, even now, as CEO of one of the most powerful tech companies in the world. He still believed in treating people with kindness, patience, and respect. That's what made him a great leader, and that's exactly what he had shown Maya, without saying much at all. Back at the airline office, Maya finally got back to her room. She flopped onto the bed, exhausted but thoughtful. She opened her laptop and searched, Sundar Pichai Leadership Style. The first result read, Sundar Pichai is known for his humble, empathetic leadership. He listens, stays calm under pressure, and believes in giving credit to others. Maya read on. Another article said, Pichai treats everyone equally, whether they're engineers, janitors, or executives. Maya smiled to herself. She had seen that firsthand. She closed the laptop and lay back, staring at the ceiling. I want to be like that, she whispered to herself. Not rich, not famous, just kind, just humble, just someone who knows how to lead with heart. And just like that, a simple flight turned into a life-changing experience. For both Sundar and Maya. One taught a lesson in grace. The story didn't end when Sundar Pichai stepped off the plane or when Maya returned to her hotel room. In fact, that was just the beginning of something bigger, something that would spread far beyond the cabin of that flight. Back at Google's headquarters, Sundar walked into his office like any other day. His assistant greeted him with a stack of emails and a quick summary of the day's meetings. "Welcome back, Mr. Pichai." "Thanks," he said with a smile. "How did things go while I was away?" As he sat down, he glanced out the window. The city buzzed below, full of life and movement. He thought for a moment about the flight, about the young flight attendant who had come to apologize, and how calmly everything had gone. He didn't plan to tell anyone about it. To him, it was just another experience, a small, quiet reminder that people are doing their best most of the time. He believed in kindness, humility, and giving others the benefit of the doubt. And that's exactly what he had done. But even though Sundar didn't plan to share the story, someone else did. That someone was Maya. A lesson that couldn't be kept quiet. After getting some rest, Maya went back to work the next day. She was still thinking about the encounter with Sundar. It kept coming back to her, not as a source of shame, but as a lesson she couldn't ignore. She told one of her coworkers during lunch break, "You won't believe who I met on my last flight," she said, smiling nervously. Her coworker raised an eyebrow. "Oh no. Who?" Maya took a deep breath. "Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google." Her friend dropped her fork. "What? Like, the Sundar Pichai?" Maya nodded. "Yes, and get this, I was rude to him. I told him, 'Everyone gets water. Don't act like you're special.' And do you know what he said?" Her coworker shook her head, eyes wide. "He smiled, said it was okay, and thanked me for apologizing. He didn't complain. He didn't demand anything. He was just kind." Her coworker stared at her for a second before saying, "You just met a billionaire CEO, insulted him, and he forgave you without even blinking?" Maya laughed softly. "Yeah, I guess I did." From there, the story started to spread. Not in a dramatic, viral way. Not yet. But within the airline crew, among the staff who worked international flights, it became a story worth sharing. And soon, it reached someone who decided to write about it. From words to wider eyes, one of the senior flight attendants who had been on the same flight wrote a short post on a private group for airline employees. "Just heard a story from one of our younger crew members. She flew with Sundar Pichai and treated him like any other passenger, including being a bit sharp with him when he asked for water. When she realized who he was, she apologized. Do you know what he said? 'It's okay. You were doing your job.' This is what real leadership looks like. Not power, not ego, just kindness and understanding." That post got shared quickly. Hundreds of flight attendants read it. Some commented, "Wow, that's rare. Most rich people wouldn't be that calm. This should be taught in training sessions." This is why I love my job. Sometimes you meet people who remind you why you care. Soon the story found its way outside of airline circles. Someone shared it on Reddit. Another person posted it on Twitter. Within days, the simple story of a flight attendant who unknowingly met Sundar Pichai and learned a powerful lesson in humility was making rounds online. But it wasn't a scandal. It wasn't meant to embarrass Maya. Instead, it became a feel-good story. A reminder that true leaders don't need to shout about their status. They lead by example. People began commenting, "This shows why Sundar is such a great leader. He treats everyone with respect." Imagine being that flight attendant. So embarrassing, but also so inspiring. This is the kind of story we need more of. News outlets picked up on it too. Tech blogs, leadership websites, and even lifestyle magazines wrote articles based on the story. One headline read, CEO of Google forgives flight attendant who mistreated him. Here's why this matters. Another one said, Sundar Pichai shows true leadership after being treated like any other passenger. The story wasn't about blame or gossip. It was about character. A change in perspective. For Maya, seeing the story spread felt strange at first. She hadn't shared it to become famous. She had just wanted to remember the experience and learn from it. But as she read the comments and saw how people reacted, she realized something important. Even though she had made a mistake, she had also grown from it. She started to see herself differently. She was no longer just a flight attendant doing a job. She was part of a team that could impact people's lives, even in small ways, and she wasn't afraid to admit when she was wrong. A few weeks later, she was assigned to another international flight. As she walked through first class, greeting passengers, she made sure to treat every single one with equal care. No assumptions, no shortcuts, just kindness. One older man noticed. "You seem really nice," he said as she handed him a drink. Maya smiled. "Thank you. I try to be." He looked at her and said, "I hope you know that small acts of kindness can change someone's day." She thought of Sundar again. "I think they already have," she said quietly. A legacy of humility. Back at Google, Sundar never saw the online posts or news articles. He stayed focused on his work, leading teams, making decisions, guiding innovation. But his values remained the same. He continued treating everyone with respect, from engineers to interns, from janitors to executives. His leadership style was known across Silicon Valley for being calm, thoughtful, and deeply human. And now, thanks to one simple flight, those values had touched even more lives. Maya had changed. The airline crew had talked about it. Thousands of people online had read about it. And somewhere, someone might have read that story and decided to be kinder to someone else. That's the ripple effect of a good deed. That's the power of a humble leader. And that's the legacy of a moment where a flight attendant humiliated Sundar Pichai, only to discover that the real lesson was about grace, forgiveness, and the strength it takes to say, "I'm sorry."